Gilding with copper leaf. All that glistens may not be gold, and semi-precious metals may be less expensive to purchase. But is it any easier to work with than real gold? Let's find out together as we tackle this simple shabby chic cable drum clock. Greetings brushketeers, and welcome to another traditional signwriting lesson with JohnBoy. This shabby chic clock, which was made from an old cable drum, is being repainted to match the customer's new home decor, and you can just about make out a ghost of the previous numerals. However, we will be ignoring them as they are barely visible from the painter's point of view. I'm sure that you can all remember from your first years in school being taught how to draw a clock. So we won't insult your intelligence by offering a refresher course in kindergarten horology, especially when we will only be using the 4/4-hour numerals. So, once we have divided the clock into 4 quarters and established our letter heights, the chalk line is used to strike the upper and lower levels of the numerals before roughly chalking out their approximate positions. The numbers on this clock will be gilded with real copper leaf, so we will be sizing it with standard gloss enamel. It doesn't really matter what color, but unless you intend to distress the gilding, in which case a contrasting colored size would be preferable, it is normal to choose a color which is at least in the same ballpark as whatever metal leaf you are using. There would be little benefit from using a dedicated gold size, due in no small part to the copper's relatively heavier weight compared to gold leaf. And we also want it to be fully dry by the next day. We would seriously advise against using any sort of acrylic size, of the type that is sold in craft shops, and usually has a milky appearance to it. This stuff does not brush out well by any stretch of the imagination, and the unsightly ploughed field effect that it produces will only be magnified once it is gilded. Plus, it never fully dries. The secret to smooth gilding is an even coat. So make sure not to leave any brush marks, which will only be highlighted when the leaf is applied. The horizontal wood grain will obviously show through the gilding, creating an aesthetically pleasing and organic texture below the metal. But the last thing that we want is an unsightly crisscross effect that would come from vertical brush marks caused by overworked paint. Fun fact: technically, we are using a Roman lettering style to paint an Arabic numeral here. With the numerals completed, we now have to wait for the paint or size to dry to a place where it is just tacky enough to receive the metal leaf. With paint, about half an hour is normally sufficient. But unlike specialized size, paint will continue to dry at a regular pace, which means that you have a relatively small window in which to complete the gilding. So don't get too far ahead of yourself when using paint as a size. Sometimes, packets of semi-precious metal leaf will come without the usual sheets of rouge paper separating the leaves. And this will make the gilding process quite awkward to do, but unlike real gold, copper leaf and the various other slag metals, if handled carefully, can be picked up. It is doable, and it produces a satisfactory result. But it can be really frustrating. If you do find yourself in this predicament, just take your time, and don't panic. You will undoubtedly find that the leaf will rip and you will have to do quite a bit of patching with smaller pieces. And as you can see here, it can also look extremely unprofessional. But be patient, brushketeers, for soon ye shall learn a much more satisfactory and, dare I say, easier method. But for now, we will persevere with these loose leaves. When the entire numeral has been covered with leaf, it can be tamped down with a large gilder's mop. This tamping should begin lightly, getting progressively heavier, but do not attempt to remove the excess just yet. So, most times, your slag metal leaves will come separated by a piece of rouge paper. With a light grip, pick up a leaf of metal, together with its corresponding piece of rouge paper, and direct it towards the sized area. Lay it against the tacky numeral, and lightly stroke outwards from the center of the paper using the padded side of a loosely fisted hand. Remove the rouge paper. If you are really lucky, you will find that you have actually picked up 2 leaves and sheets. But if you haven't been so gifted, then simply repeat the previous process, and continue until all the numerals are covered. You may still need to add in a few missed bits, or holidays as they are known in the trade, but this is perfectly normal and sure beats the previous haphazard method. Tamp all the gilded areas again. This time much harder than before. We can now begin to remove the excess leaf. Use a medium pressure and a circular motion of the mop to both press the leaf onto the size and simultaneously remove most of the unwanted metal. Patch any holidays as required. And leave to dry overnight. The fully dried paint size should now have created a pretty strong bond with the metal leaf, and the remaining excess can now be removed. Again with the gilder's mop. Try to run the mop along the edge of the lettering and not into it. This will help to prevent tearing of the leaf. Sweep up your skewings and either dispose of them or recycle them. The relative thickness of Dutch metal will inevitably lead to a less than perfect edge to your lettering. But this can be trimmed by adding an outline around the entire character. As the customer did not want to deviate from a two-color scheme, we will be using a blue enamel of a similar shade to the background color, which will create a very subtle outlined appearance to the numerals. So as we complete the outlining, we see that the time has come for us to wish you farewell. Until the next time, brushketeers.